Haman Nature, a journey in search of a peaceful and prosperous society with human nature as a guide. Led by your host, Adam Haman.
Hello, Bob.
Hello, Adam. Before we jump in, let me just explain to people, I am on the road coming back from a meeting. I saw some movers and shakers in D.C., and so I'm in a hotel. So this may be choppy, and also I remember the good mic, I forgot the good camera. So for the legions of you who watch this on YouTube, my video resolution will be lower than usual. But other than that, I'm ready to go.
You're going to have to make up for these deficiencies by being extra smart.
I will try.
Okay.
Objects in mirror may be more intelligent than they appear.
So you've been cavorting with power movers and shakers in D.C. I have been sailing the seven seas without you on board. I was very dismayed when I went on the Tom Woods cruise just now, and there was no Bob Murphy there.
So let me take this moment to officially say, because it's the kind of thing I think Tom would have felt funny saying it, but I saw Tom promoting that on the social media, whatever, and a few random people were, hey, how come Bob's not there? So let me just officially say, it's obviously not that Tom needed my permission, but he did kind of mention to me a while ago, like, hey, I'm thinking of doing a cruise, sort of like if you were going to date some guy's ex-girlfriend, you might just run it by him, just, not that. Anyway, so, and I, of course, said, oh, yeah, totally, go ahead and do that. It was a moot point because I got little kids and there was no way I could have gone anyway. But I think like George Washington, even if I had been able to go, I may have not, because Tom needs to be able to do it without me. And so he needed to go his own way. And otherwise it would have just been the Contra cruise, but not talking about Krugman. And so this is Tom's thing, and he's the cruise guy. And we had that time together, but it's now Tom's thing. And so maybe down the road I will be a guest speaker. We don't know. But I think it was important that this is the Tom Woods cruise. It is not Contra Krugman, and, that's why. But I did. I'm joking, as I know I'm being a little bit facetious here, but everything's cool. It's not that, I was snubbing Tom or he was dissing me. So there you go. How'd it go?
Think you should have heard what you said about
yeah, I know. He's right. He's like, all right, turn the mics off. All right, now that the Tom Woods, now we're done talking to Horton. Now let's talk about Murphy.
It was very good. It was very similar in format and style and vibe. It's just there was a little bit of a Bob Murphy shaped hole missing, in the whole event. But no, it was wonderful. I still think those four that you guys put on together were great, and it's still great. And I highly recommend anybody hop on over and get on the Tom Woods cruise.
Yes, I will second that, especially for people who've never, because I'll be honest, I used to be a naysayer. I used to think, if I'm going to go on vacation somewhere, I'm going to go somewhere. Why the heck would I want to just be on a ship bouncing around? But no, cruises they're kind of neat. It's like a little floating city, and it's a good time.
Yeah, definitely. If you like all-inclusive resorts, it's a lot like that, except you're floating, and it's better. So, as is the way in this new year where things are just going 100,000 miles a minute, it seems like since we last spoke, there's just so much to talk about. What do you want to lead with?
I think something that caught my eye was you had done an analysis of the now infamous Oval Office, whatever that was, event where they had the cameras rolling, and I think ostensibly it was just supposed to be a, shake hands in front of the cameras and, okay, we're working on a deal and blah, 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 and then things did not go that way. And I guess you have an analysis of that, not from an ideological point of view, like, as an avid reader of Scott Horton's work, but just as a professional poker player, you wanted to weigh in on that spectacle.
Yeah. I mean, I provocatively titled my piece something about I'm a brilliant poker player, so let me tell you what I saw. But honestly, what Zelensky was doing didn't look that, it wasn't that hard to diagnose. And as you say, these things are normally perfunctory. A deal was made behind the scenes, and the interested parties are going to come out in oversized chairs and smile to the cameras and shake hands and maybe reveal a thing or two about the deal. But boy, this wasn't that at all. It was nervous and I mean, it wasn't contentious right from the start. But the 30 minutes where Trump was talking about the deal and Zelensky was chiming in, Zelensky just looked nervous as all heck, and it was just painfully clear that he did not like this deal at all. And he kept doing these weird things that you just never see. Because again, these deals are done behind the scenes, and when the cameras and the reporters are there, it's not like you're trying to rehash the issue. Except Zelensky was. He kept sliding in terms and demands that were clearly not part of the deal, and Trump would look at him funky and say, "Yeah, well, we'll see about that." And no, that's not the case. And it just got weirder and weirder. And most of the talking heads on the left said that when the blowup occurred, which I guess we'll talk about in a second, that Trump and Vance are so incredibly unstatesmanlike and not presidential. And see, this is how you can't have an outsider in the Oval Office because he'll just embarrass you by treating world leaders so disrespectfully. And that wasn't what I saw at all. I thought Zelensky was the incredibly disrespectful one, to the point where he was saying that we need Putin is the aggressor, and the United States and all of Europe needs to back Ukraine 100%. And if not, then U.S. soldiers are going to fight, and the violence will come to our shores. And he was just like making these veiled threats in this weird situation that, again, is just supposed to be a camera op. And and I just loved that Trump and Vance weren't having any of it, to the point where Vance starts lecturing him. And after Zelensky lectured J.D. Vance, and my unique insight is just the fact that, again, it's not unique, but I didn't think that Zelensky was interested in Eastern Europe at all. I don't think he was interested in Ukraine or the soldiers' lives that he's throwing away. I don't think he was concerned about the threat of World War III. In fact, when that was brought up, he literally shrugged. I think Zelensky was trying to make the thugs and creeps and oligarchs back in Ukraine that sent him here to get more of our money. I think he was trying to let them see on camera that he really was trying as hard as he could and trying to save a little face so that he doesn't go back home and get murdered. And then then the blow up occurred that everybody saw, and it was I was throwing popcorn in my mouth like a like the meme, and I thought it was fascinating. And then I think you just heard, maybe it was today or maybe yesterday. Oh yeah, it was during the speech Trump gave to Congress. That's normally called the State of the Union, but for whatever reason isn't this time. Trump said that Zelensky kowtowed and sent him the letter saying, I'm prepared to accept the deal and sue for peace. And so I guess it all worked, but I thought it was like everyone was complaining that meeting in the Oval Office was just horrible and how they couldn't believe it. And I thought it was great. We never usually get to see these things. It's just scripted. It's plastic. Nothing is real. You never get to see what the issues are. And this was I don't know if you've read Scott Horton's book, Provoked, Bob, but even if you haven't, I'm sure you've heard a few debates on the subject. And, the United States for the past several decades has provoked this whole thing by pushing NATO ever further eastward and meddling in Eastern Europe. And it, not you and I, but we, the nation, our government, got a lot of people killed. And I found it refreshing to see that our current leadership isn't trying to continue that. It's actually trying to solve it, trying to fix it, trying to end it. And it was such a surprise to a guy like Zelensky that he thought I could try and change the deal in front of the cameras or something. I don't know. What did you think when you saw it?
Well, yeah, I'm curious for you to elaborate a little bit on that. That I wondered. So okay. So one thing is, and this isn't scientific or anything, but when I was at NYU, there were a lot of international students there. Like even just in my cohort, there was only one other American, and the rest there were like 2 and 3 from other, a big sampling of other countries. And so I feel like, maybe more than the average American, I have a sense of like talking to people where English is not their first language, but they're pretty good English speakers and whatever. And my read of Zelensky really was, I don't think he understood how rude he was being. That like you're saying, Adam, I was shocked, but he wouldn't let. There was a stretch there where Trump couldn't finish a sentence, right. And it was like, when you're going hat in hand to ask for money, you know what I mean? Like if you were going to the local church because you were behind on your rent and you had no other place to turn, and you were going there and you needed to borrow money to pay the landlord to try to make something happen and whatever, and you knew if this guy doesn't give me money, like we're gonna get kicked on the street, and the guy running the church was some blowhard and he was lecturing you, or you would sit there and take it. You wouldn't keep interrupting him. That would be stupid. And so just what Zelensky was doing, like I couldn't understand it, and I think it was like you said, like I could be wrong because I know some people were like attributing all kinds of ulterior motives to him, but I think it was Occam's razor. Just I really do think. I'm not saying the reasons for him trying to change the deal could be besides just he's a patriot and whatever, but I'm saying I think he thought he was doing a good job is what I'm getting at. You know what I mean? Whereas prima facie, what he was doing is like, are you trying to ensure that we don't give you money? You know what I mean? Like, if Trump wanted to cut off aid to them, what better gift could Zelensky have given Trump than that performance to show people, this is why we can't give this guy any more money. Do you see what we're dealing with? You know what I mean? And Trump even said something like that. He said something like, that's why I let this go on so long. I wanted the American people to see this. You know what I mean? So whether Trump was just saying that ex post because he realized, this is kind of crazy and I probably should have nipped it in the bud. So he was trying to like explain, I did, like do a Pee Wee Herman. I did that on purpose. I meant to do that. I don't know. But still, I think that was the way to play it, was to say, do you see what we're dealing with behind? If he's doing this with the cameras rolling, can you imagine what a pain in the ass this guy is behind closed? That's what I think he was saying. So anyway, I'm saying that was a gift to the anti-war or anti-interventionist in Ukraine movement, because up till then Zelensky was this hero and whatever, and I think a lot of people who don't suffer from Trump derangement syndrome could look at that and say, yeah, that's right. Not the way you would behave. Like I said, he literally just kept interrupting. Trump could not finish a sentence. It was astonishing. I guess the other thing I'll say is, but to finish the point, what I meant though is, I think Zelensky was earnest. Like, I have been in situations where somebody from another country is doing something, and it's very rude. Like, if an American were doing it, it would be rude. But I realized I don't think they fully get just how socially awkward this is right now, like, whether it's a culture or whatever. So likewise there, I think Zelensky probably didn't understand fully like how he was coming off and why, J.D. Vance and Trump would be looking at him like, what are you doing? The other thing I'll say is, I thought, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, there's a couple things about that. My read tracks with yours. Like, I've met plenty of Russian speakers and Ukrainian speakers in my poker room travels, and I do think they tend to be forward and pushy without realizing exactly how wrong that rubs most of us here in the West. But there's another possibility here. I mean, that creepy senator from Connecticut, I think, Chris Murphy, he was bragging that he and a bunch of other Congress critters had breakfast with Zelensky, I think that morning, or on the very same trip for sure. And it could just be that I'm right, and he wants to make sure that, the Azov battalion doesn't stab him in the back the second he gets back for looking like he just gave away the store. And B, maybe they gave him they filled his head full of nonsense. Like, just say the talking points. Putin is an aggressor, and borders have consequences, and say all the dumb, stupid, blue-pilled things, and maybe maybe you can just weasel your way out of it. And there's also a game theory thing here that maybe if he knows that this is a deal Trump really wants, he doesn't have that much to lose. He can throw this Hail Mary, and then maybe the people who just lost this election will grab Trump and shake him and say, yeah, we got to defend Ukraine no matter what, because democracy. And then if the Hail Mary gets knocked aside and it goes incomplete, so whatever, I'll call the guy in a week and make the same deal. Maybe he was just gambling.
Okay, so I'm glad you said that again, because I want to be clear. I think all of the above. So I want to be clear. You're right. I think a combination of that, Zelensky could literally get murdered if he goes back home. And for people who this isn't on your radar, like I've heard Scott Horton talking about that. There are some, as you can imagine, Russia invades your country and a bunch of your buddies are all dead. There are some people that they're just going to devote their lives. Like, even if Zelensky formally surrendered the capital and they became entirely part of Russia, there would be people who would just go down always, being a sniper or something and doing whatever they could to kill the Russian occupiers. You know what I mean? So there are people at that point. So if they thought Zelensky sold them out, you could imagine maybe he wouldn't feel safe even going back to his country anymore. So there's that element. And when Zelensky goes and talks to the media and getting the Vogue cover photos, and everyone's blowing smoke up his behind. So I think he believed that, I need to circumvent Trump. I need to take my appeal to the American people, and that's what he was trying to do. So don't misunderstand. I think that, he realized this deal that they're trying to foist on me behind closed doors is unacceptable, and so let me just try to flip it and take the case to the American public and embarrass Trump. And also kind of a thing, like how Kamala, I think with good coaching, like got Trump to, like she was talking about the crowd size or something and kind of got him off his game. And so likewise, too, I could even go so far as to think there could have been people prepping Zelensky to say, what you need to do is engineer it and make Trump look like a complete a-hole. And you're just this innocent guy saying, hey, our country got invaded. So my only addition to that is I think Zelensky, he didn't play it right. Like, if you're trying to be the helpless victim and you're trying to cast Trump as the bully, which they did try to do, right? Everyone kept calling Trump a bully after when I say like the major media and whatever. But it was a little bit weird to say, this poor bully, he kept trying to explain why he wasn't going to give hundreds of billions of dollars because he wanted people to stop dying, and this guy kept interrupting him. Like, normally the bully doesn't come up and the bully's allowed to finish a sentence as he's trying to refrain from giving you money. Normally the bully takes your money and interrupts you, not vice versa. So I'm saying, given that it was a weird stretch to try to cast Trump as the bully, you don't keep interrupting him to cast him as the bully. That doesn't even make sense.
It was useful for Trump to have Vance there too, sort of like, Spock interrogating Khan in that old Star Trek episode with Kirk just sitting there. It was just nice for him to be able to take some of the heat. And the way Zelensky treated the both of them, it's like you said, usually the guy who's, getting his butt kicked and asking for help doesn't start insulting. He said to J.D. Vance, what do you know about, our situation in Ukraine? Have you ever even been there?
Right.
Vance is pretty sharp. He's like, I know you go and give this. Yeah. And Vance says, well, if I went there and took the tour of the Potemkin villages, I'm sure you give everybody else who's there. I'd think you guys were doing great. But no, I read actually military reports, and we have satellites, and I know what's going on over there, guy. And I should say, as I'm fanboying here over Trump and throwing popcorn in my mouth, watching, people joust on the field preparing for World War III, I should say my libertarian bona fides, I don't really like the way Trump is handling this. I don't like that he's getting us more embroiled in that country to the extent that we're going to send over contractors and try to dig up these rare earth minerals and whatnot, and that the brilliant plan to avoid giving Ukraine a security guarantee in writing is to do even worse and put American boots on the ground such that if they get attacked there, It's going to drag our military into this conflict, obviously, which is, as I think Trump and Vance or Marco Rubio, it might have been, have said, that's even stronger than a security guarantee. I would rather, much like our behavior in the Middle East, I'd rather our leaders just apologize profusely for behaving the way they have for several decades, if not 100 years, and just back away and go home. Trump's not doing that. He wants to be the peacemaker, the deal maker. He thinks that, he wants to get some money clawed back out of all the money that we've given them, quote unquote, we. And, I think that's dumb, but it's way better than whatever Biden was doing and what Harris would have done.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I'm glad you brought that up just to make sure I didn't come off as endorsing the whole mineral thing. And like, yeah, that's crazy. I think I understand, sort of like too with the Trump deal about saying, oh, we're going to take over, we're going to own Gaza or whatever. Like, I think there is an element of, if Trump knows what the end goal is going to be, and then realizing I can't just go straight at that because that's going to cost me too much politically. I got to somehow spin this that I'm making a great deal and we're going to, we're profiting on it in narrow terms as well as it being the right thing to do. So I'm not trying to make excuses for him. I just think that's partly what's going on here, that Trump just can't say, well, we shouldn't have been involved over there, so we're going to leave. And sorry, like that's not how Trump rolls. Also, too, I do want to say before I forget, that although I liked how Trump handled himself in those interactions, I agree with the people. JD Vance saying, "Have you even said thank you?" Or like he seemed kind of, I don't know what the term I want is, but that didn't seem very manly to me either. You know what I mean? Like that seemed kind of like, okay, that if we're talking about World War III and all these other things, like I don't need the guy to say thank you very much. You know what I mean? Or he should have. Don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying, like, and the same kind of thing where I was going back to the analogy of, if you are going to the church or whatever because you're behind on your rent and that's the only place you can think to go, if the guy who's in charge of giving you the money said, no, wait a minute, have you said thank you yet? You know, I'm like, I would think that guy was really just being a jerk for no reason. You know what I mean? So I in terms of just me watching that emotionally or whatever you want to say, I thought Trump was the best. That Zelensky, I couldn't believe what he was pulling. And JD Vance, half the stuff he said I thought was pretty reasonable. But then some of the stuff he did too, I thought he was like making the guy grovel, or trying to make him grovel, and then Zelensky didn't. So,
I think you're right, and that moment stood out to me too as sounding off. And I'm purely speculating here, of course, but the "you should be grateful" thing, Vance didn't come up with that on the spot. I think it was a line that was said earlier by Rubio or somebody else. It makes sense that it would be Rubio. And I got the weird sense that like Trump had told Vance to do that if Zelensky started cracking wise or something. And again, it reminded me of that Star Trek episode where Kirk could be the calm person while Spock is fencing with Khan. It just, I don't know, it seemed a little bit, that part seemed a little bit manipulated, because I agree with you, it is a little bit unmanly to be sitting there in a perfectly sound position of strength and begging somebody to say thank you. Who does that? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Okay, yeah. So I'm open to the idea that both sides went in there knowing, like, I think Zelensky knew I'm going to try to flip things with the cameras rolling, and I think Trump knew this guy might try to pull something and was ready, and wouldn't surprise me at all if he told Vance, yeah, if that happens, you go at that guy, and then I'm going to come in and like settle it. You know what I mean? Like, which is exactly how it played out.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what would have happened if he'd just done it my way and said, sorry, we kicked off a huge war over there, but we're just leaving now, and you guys can just figure it out on your own. Maybe Europe wants to step in, and, oh, by the way, we're out of NATO. This was always stupid. Sorry, see ya. Makes me wonder what would have happened in that case. Would it have ended faster, or would did we have to be involved in order to be King Kong and, dictate terms? and I just don't know.
Well, I suppose right. If it really is just we don't care what Europe does, we don't care what the Ukrainian remaining forces do, we don't care what Putin does. We're just saying we're pulling all of our stuff out. Then yeah, you would have no leverage over anybody at that point if they knew no matter what
Right.
we say they're doing the same thing. So I suppose if it's more of a conditional, like, okay, we're going to start cutting the funding, and we're going to stop sending you these cruise missiles, and then we're going to start withdrawing our advisors, and we have a 6-month timetable, then you could say, so long as you keep doing X, Y, you know what I mean? Like you kind of drag it out a little bit and still retain some influence because, they could still say, well, I'd rather them drag it out than just pull everybody next Tuesday. So I think there is that element. Before I forget, I do want to definitely just say something else, though, in terms of the aftermath and the reaction that people were having. So one thing is all these Europeans, like you probably saw one ad I retweeted where somebody like it had a, the screenshot and it showed Zelensky and then they had superimposed Beavis and Butthead on Trump and JD Vance and said, this is what Americans look like right now. And so I retweeted that and said, and they said, hey, America, this is what you look like to us or something like that. So I retweeted that and said, hey, rest of the world, if you're asking us to keep sending hundreds of billions of dollars to fund your causes, stop telling us how stupid you think we are. It was amazing to me that they, they're just sitting there mocking Americans and then like, okay, so start giving us your money again, you idiots. And it was like, no, how about if we're so stupid, then why don't you pay for your own stuff? You know what I mean? Like, because it's also with the USAID and all that stuff too. It's like, hey, there's people dying of HIV somewhere on planet Earth. That's clearly the American taxpayer's responsibility. It's like, well, who said that?
Yeah, but it's like the political left in America has trained Europe to think they could treat Trump like that and everything will be fine. After all, that's the way they've been treating him and everything is fine.
Right.
We've set the situation up where they think they can treat us like absolute jerk-offs and we'll go, okay, here's some money. And they must be in shock that it's a whole new.
It's funny you say that because that's literally what some. Yeah, that's actually literally what some foreign people said in response to my tweet. That no, we're not saying we're making fun of Trump so that the other Americans who also make fun of him all the time can get a good laugh and like literally what you just said. So, but the other more substantive point though is I saw. It was later. It was I think Marco Rubio was on some talk show or some MSNBC or whatever he was after this and explaining stuff blah blah blah, and somebody retweeted that and said here and minute 17 of this clip, Marco Rubio had a clear opportunity to denounce Putin as the aggressor and yet he refused to do so. And it was like, you guys understand we're trying to negotiate with them. Everybody knows that people think Putin is the aggressor. You know what I mean? Like, what would be served by the incoming, Trump's team who have to go deal with the Russians and try to get them to withdraw under certain conditions and blah, 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 to just go on TV and be like, oh, yeah, Putin's clearly the bad guy here. He's the next Hitler. There'd be no gain. That's like these people. I tell me if you are tracking with what I'm saying here. I was trying to put my finger on what is it. And I think part of it is they really are incapable of getting inside the head of someone who disagrees with them.
No, I totally get it. I just don't understand if they're being serious or whether they really are 8-year-olds or 2-year-olds. I mean, can you imagine these people being in the room and actually making negotiations? You think you can stick your tongue out and call somebody neener, you ate the wiener, and then expect to have sit down and sign a treaty with them or whatever? It's beyond childish. I don't think they mean it. I think they're just looking for, well, they've also been conditioned over the last several years to think that virtue signaling is the start and beginning of every sentence. And you identify who the evil people are and you make sure they know it and you know that they know it. And yeah, can you imagine letting these people loose in your State Department to go out and represent the country to the rest of the world? It's insane.
Yeah, I had a somewhat cryptic tweet about it that it didn't get many hearts. So I don't know if it was too cryptic or just it's not as funny as I thought. But the analogy I was making is, can you imagine how would these Democrats, because these Democrats are the ones they were doing it, like having this reaction and, oh wow, Trump's siding with Putin. He refuses to denounce him as an aggressor and blah blah blah. And I was thinking, like, imagine there's some bank robbers take a bunch of hostages in the bank and then they're holed up there and the police have them surrounded and they call in the FBI negotiator and he's talking. And can you imagine and then he's giving briefings to the press or whatever on the standoff. And can you imagine these people, like, they would be saying things like, he was asked point blank, who's at fault for this standoff? And he refused to denounce, the bank robbers as the clear aggressors here. He even said he was trying to work with them and sent them pizza.
Right.
Can you imagine?
Right.
Why is he siding with the bank? And to realize, no, we're trying to get people out without getting everybody killed. What the hell's wrong with you? Of course he's the aggressor. We're negotiating with him. So anyway.
You're saying you would give Hitler pizza? Real cool, Bob. No, I totally get it. Like I said, I don't think these people can possibly be serious, because if they are, I don't want to think about how many adults are running around with the IQs or emotional stability of small children. One of the things about this whole,
but just can I, before we move on though, just to drive home, because it's not just on this one isolated thing, just in general arguing. And when I say these people, you can say, who do you mean, Bob? And I said, the people for whom all these statements I'm making are accurate. That's the people I mean. That, but it's not an empty set, that's for sure. And it's when you argue with, like, the only reason you could possibly be in favor of tax cuts is because you hate poor people. You know what I mean? Like that, I'm saying that level of simplicity, and the only reason someone could possibly disagree with me is because they're bad or they're stupid. And that's what I'm saying, like this inability to get in someone's head. And that's why, like, I think Trump actually is a good negotiator, and that's why he can, like, he can ingratiate himself. And even though I don't think it's hyperbole that, Trump actually is good at making deals. And to make a deal, what do you have to do? You have to get in the head of the other person and understand what is it that they want. And so what can I give? If they want something more than I don't want to give up, then there's gains for trade there. Anyway, you get the idea.
Yeah, totally. Couple of things. The one I wanted to say a second ago is that as much as I don't like what Trump is doing, I'd rather he just back away. I am impressed by the way he's doing it, because he was, just in case the thing with Zelensky and the rare earth thing didn't work out, he was also simultaneously proposing a deal with Putin to do the same similar thing in at least the Donbass region. And so, it's a carrot and a stick thing, and I've got other options, and that. And I just from a deal making standpoint, I'd love to be in the room and see all these balls up in the air. And then a completely separate
Can I also
issue,
just say, though, it's just real quick on that, I think we just need to stop for a moment and acknowledge how crazy it is in a good way that there's a lot of rank and file Republicans now who are all about, we need to stop the killing, and this, what I mean? Like they've pivoted, like it's completely partisan. Yeah. And now the Democrats are the ones in favor of keeping a war going on, and it's the Republicans, right? But think of the children. Like, it's wild. And who was the one that engineered that switch? Donald Trump, who you would think, in a vacuum, you would have thought, oh, the fear will be this crazy, insecure guy who's got to prove his macho. He might go around starting wars. When it's like, this crazy guy might go around stopping wars. What an oops, I swore.
Right,
we might have to keep that. But
yeah, exactly. We got to give credit to the OG. I think this happens because, for the Republican base broadly, I think it was Ron Paul that cracked that open. Said you don't have to be a hippie or a commie to favor peace. And then Tucker Carlson's flipping the way he did, and then Donald Trump, to push the whole thing over the goal line. But you said something interesting that it's a complete and total pivot. When you're talking about how irrational people are on every subject, that, as you said, you say you favor tax cuts for a bunch of complicated reasons, and they say you must hate poor people. All right, folks, sorry about that. We had a technical glitch. It turns out that hotel Wi-Fi is terrible. So you were saying, Bob.
I think they specifically what it was is Ron Paul, but showed how it could be done. Like showed the way you can appeal to right-wing conservatives without coming off as like a naive hippy dippy guy. And so then Trump saw that because he even later,
absolutely.
like during his first run, Trump said something. He said nice words about Ron Paul. I can't remember. It was something like, I don't agree with all of his views on foreign policy or whatever, but he's coming from a good place. He's a constitutionalist, and I respect him. He tried to say something like, "Don't worry, I'm not as isolationist as this guy," but he didn't want to. But he wanted to like pay homage to.
Right.
And so I think no matter what else, Trump saw, holy cow, he's got a hardcore group of people who are really fired up, and realized I can work with that. Kind of like this is a goofy thing, but like I think Jon Stewart on The Daily Show showed you can be entertaining and talk about politics, and he kind of just opened up, you know what I mean? Like it just showed how you could pull that off. And then I think, that really enlarged the genre.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. And before we strain your hotel room Wi-Fi any further, I just want to close one loop. You were talking about how seemingly stupid the objections we run into. You want to end this war, you must love Putin. You want tax cuts, well, you just must absolutely hate the poor. I want to throw out a lifeline or a bit of an excuse for people, at least people on the dumb side of things. This won't apply to people who are smart, but maybe if you're just kind of dumb, it's hard to figure out how tax policy actually impacts the real world. And it's hard to understand geopolitics and history. It's hard to pick up Scott Horton's book, let alone read it. So maybe in this complicated world, some people just, maybe we shouldn't expect them to do anything more than to pick sides and then throw feces at you if you're on the wrong side. Maybe that's all they can do or something like that. I mean, I'm trying to come up with a reason it isn't these people are just demons from hell for why they behave so badly and make such seemingly arguments that just don't make any sense. Like they couldn't possibly be true. You couldn't possibly actually think that I actually hate poor people, and that's why I think tax cuts are good. Maybe it's something else.
Good point. I agree with you. I think it's a combination of all things that clearly these people are not operating on the same approach to the world that we do, and who knows what the heck's going on. But that's all I got.
All right, sounds good.
I
Thanks
feel like
for
we
that.
should wrap up before I get kicked off again.
Yes. Before we push our luck, let's say goodbye. This was great, Bob. Watch all the stuff. Thanks for watching, ladies and gentlemen. We'll catch you next time.
So long.